Governor DeSantis and other governors across America have made it illegal to teach the history of slavery, to teach racism, and now putting a very disingenuous spin on the role of slavery in American history, treating it as if it was something benevolent for African people, claiming that we actually benefited from slavery. That is insane.
It is.
The question we have to ask ourselves, as a result of that information, as a result of hearing that you have states that are passing legislation making it illegal to teach the truth about slavery, or in the case of Florida, you have states who are revising their social studies curriculum to project slavery as having been a benevolent and worthwhile institution for African people. I'm willing to bet you not a single meeting was held to do anything about it.
Wow.
And I'm willing to bet you that not a single meeting was held to build a school so our children could be taught, or if not even a school, build a program so black children could be taught who they are. I'm willing to bet you that there was no systemic, productive response to the fact that they're going to be teaching that slavery was a good thing for African people. We don't respond. We react. Okay? When the police kill us, we react. When other black people get on our nerves, we react. When the government does something against our better interests, we react. Black people don't respond because we don't want any responsibility. So we only react. We have a temporary temper tantrum, and we go right back to the status quo, business as usual.
Wow, that is amazing. Because I was under the assumption that there's a Board of Education, or like Department of Education, and I thought that the Department of Education across America forms all the curriculums, command over the curriculums. I didn't know that the individual states could pick and choose what they want to teach the students.
Yes, they can. Remember, the U.S. Constitution does not mention the word education. The Bill of Rights doesn't give anyone a right to an education. The preamble to the Constitution doesn't guarantee anyone an education. The founders, the white, racist, slave-owning founding fathers of the United States of America, they never discussed a comprehensive public education system. So with that being said, education is a state right. It is not a federal right. It is a state right that is guaranteed by the state constitution in which you live. So although there's no federal right to an education, nearly every state gives you a state right that is mentioned in the state's constitution. So it is a state right for your child to get an education. It is a local function because education is implemented and it is operated and supervised locally through school boards. And it is a federal interest. So the federal government is interested in education only so far as funding programs that it feels children need to be a part of in order for them to be of maximum benefit to the agenda that the government has for them, such as a JROTC, special education, the Title I money. So anytime the feds get involved in education, they use their money in order to force states to comply with their wishes, because the federal government has no constitutional mandate in public ed. So what they do in D.C. is they create programs, they fund those programs, and in funding those programs, they're able to force states who want that money to comply with those programs. And so that's how the federal government ends up in the school. Also, when it comes to the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, equal protection under the law, the federal government has to guarantee that any right that a state gives to its citizens, once it is made a state right, as is education, the federal government now has a responsibility to make sure that states are being fair and equitable in their administration of that right. So when we go back to the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case, Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, and that whole effort to desegregate the schools, which finally happened on May 17, 1954, it was the 14th Amendment that state largely based, that case was largely won on. It was the 14th Amendment that served as the foundation. Since children have a right to an education in the state, and many states even make that right compulsory, meaning you have to go to school, okay, they cannot then be racist or discriminatory in the application and implementation of that right. So the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision was not, it was constitutional law only as far as the 14th Amendment says that we must have equal protection under the law. So the argument that they made was, since black children are being forced to attend separate and unequal schools, that constitutes a violation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause.
And they don't see a need to protect our children. They say that they are implementing those new things because they don't want to make their children feel guilty.
You're raising a good point. The point you are raising right now, if the federal government can get involved in public education issues on the state level, if they find that there's a violation of the 14th Amendment Equal Protection under the law, I believe an argument can be made based on your premise that if white kids are being taught who they are, and if white children are being taught how great they are and what their ancestors did and contributed to this country, is it not a violation of equal protection under the law, 14th Amendment, to deny black children the same right to know who they are, what their ancestors contributed to America, and how they were treated historically by America? I believe that if we had some serious black attorneys out here, I definitely believe that this is a case that could go to federal court. Equal protection under the law. I think the argument can be made that black children's right to an adequate education about themselves and what America has done to their people is being denied. And white children are not being denied the right to know who they are. I definitely believe that that falls under 14th Amendment equal protection. But here's the thing, Baba David. If Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston never decide to challenge separate but equal, we might still have it. If Dr. King never decided to challenge separate but equal, we might still have it. So the question becomes, who is going to stand up and challenge this? And it needs to be attorneys that do it. I do know Benjamin Crump a couple of months ago said that he would be filing suit as it related to some aspect of Governor DeSantis leaving, dismissing the Black History advanced placement course. He did say he was going to be going to court for something about that. This is new, the rewriting of the social studies curriculum that's going to say slavery was beneficial to black people. To me, that is harmful. That in and of itself is harmful to the psyche of black children. So if you look at it, Baba David, the same argument that was used in the Brown versus Board of Education case could be used in this case of white school districts, firstly, denying black children their history in this country while not denying white kids theirs, and then misrepresenting what that history was for black children, but not doing it. I'm going to go back to what I always say. We got to build our own school. See, the fact that they're going to start teaching that slavery benefited black people because it taught us some skills, first of all, that's a flat-out lie. One of the reasons why they chose African people, in addition to our genetic superiority, being able to withstand the climates and the diseases of North America that neither the white man nor the red man could, was the fact that we were already expert in the planting and growing of the crops that they would use us for. Cotton is not foreign to African people. We were making cotton clothing for millennia before the white man got there. So we knew about planting cotton and growing cotton. And if you read the narratives of the slavers, those who went to Africa and those who purchased Africans, they often picked our ancestors based on their ability to be able to plant in the grow. We introduced vegetables and fruits and herbs into America from Africa. So they didn't teach us. They brought us because we already knew, and in many cases, we taught them. I mean, the cotton gin itself was an invention of an enslaved African. So the fact that they are going to flat out lie on the history, despite all the evidence to the contrary, speaks to the racism of America, speaks to the fact that the white man has never changed his clothes, but it also speaks to the weakness of the black community. It speaks to the fact that they know that they can do this because they're going to get absolutely no pushback from the black community. They wouldn't dare try this with any other group, but they will do it with us because, as Frederick Douglass said, he who is whipped the easiest will be whipped the most.
Wow. And they do it, and we let them do it so easily.
So easily. So easily.
So easily. we got another
Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, she put on her black face for a minute and made a statement against it. But there's nothing systemically being done by the White House against this. There's nothing being systemically done by the Democratic Party. There's nothing being systemically done by the Congressional Black Caucus. There's no attack or no pushback by any of these mainstream civil rights or political special interest groups. They're going to let it happen because, as I've said before, Baba David, the Democratic Party is in cahoots with the Republican Party as it relates to the genocide of African people. What the Democratic Party does is they don't stop the Republican Party from doing anything against black people. They let them do it, and then they come out with a fake propaganda campaign in the media to make it look like they didn't support it. They are in full lock and step with the Republicans as it relates to spoiling and dismissing the true history of African people in this country.
Yeah, because why can't they talk about withholding funds to that?
Absolutely.
State. That's why we won't withhold your monies for that state because you're not in compliance.
Absolutely. If the state of Florida or any other state wants to make it illegal to teach slavery, wants to make it illegal to teach racism, and want to misrepresent what slavery was to African people, the greatest Holocaust in human history, then you will get no funding. No federal funding will go to states that are electing to discriminate against black children in instruction.
That's right.
That would solve it right there, Baba David. That would end it. Biden is not going to do that. This new resurrection of blatant and bold white racism that doesn't want to concede on anything regarding black people. The Democrats aren't going to rock the boat because they don't want to lose conservative Democrats and they don't want to lose liberal Republicans ahead of next year's election. I swear, Baba, one question, I wish I could take a poll of all 50 million Africans in America, and no, I don't discriminate between whether that African came on a plane or whether that African came on a ship or whether that African came on a boat before Columbus. It's all the same to me, one family. But I wish I could take a poll of all Africans in America and find out who's voting next November and what exactly are you voting for if you are voting.
Hi, yes, I'm calling because of the 14th Amendment. I truly believe that, yes, if Thurgood Marshall was here, we do have a case on education versus Brown in reference to what's being taught in our schools today. I truly believe that if our boys knew where they came from and their history, we wouldn't have all that's going on now. And Brother DrUmarJohnson, I love you. Keep up the fight. I'm doing all that I can in my community. I came out of the school district because I didn't like how our school district was running our special ed education piece. I opened up my own daycare so that I can start. It starts early.
It does. And you know what? I'm so glad that you said that you teach the boys where they came from and it would make a difference. And that is, I totally agree with that because it changed me. It changed my life. Once I found out that I was African and I came from greatness and I came from kings and queens, it changed my whole attitude towards myself. And I stopped acting like an American Negro. You know, I started acting more like an African born in America. And it really changed my life altogether. So I agree. Once you find out who you are, you ain't can never be like that again.
Well, the other thing we have to keep in mind, too, family, is the education is essential. It is critical. It is necessary. Without it, our children will never step into the greatness that their ancestors once achieved. However, no matter how much education they get, if we don't provide them with economic opportunities to make a decent living, they will end up in Graterford Prison in CFCF just like everybody else. The prisons are filled with black men and women who know their history, know their culture, but they were not given an opportunity. There are men out here breaking the law, robbing, stealing, killing, and selling, who know who they are, know their history. But guess what? They did not get an opportunity. So we not only have to teach them who they are, we also have to make sure that our children are receiving opportunities because, again, we have 2 million African Americans in this country with master's degrees and doctoral degrees who cannot find work. Wow. So knowledge of self is critical, but an opportunity to financially take care of yourself is just as critical.